To East Hampton Town Planning Board. We are live, being recorded and being streamed. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, LTV. Good evening and welcome to the Town of East Hampton Planning Board, our meeting of August 14th, 2024. We have a range of matters on for tonight. We start with a public hearing on the Ranger Estates final subdivision. Then we'll have a number of matters on for work session, sub-waiver and site plan reviews, subdivision reviews. Well, no, that one's off. For those of you keeping score at home, the Heritage Farm final subdivision modification is not going to be on tonight. There was a request to adjourn that. We also have on our regular meetings some site plan resolutions and old filed map modifications. We're going to work on the adjournment policy and try and get it a little more consistent and rational, so that folks can, so that the planning department doesn't expend time and energy, and the particular member of the planning board who may have an application that at the last minute gets adjourned doesn't waste his or her time. I don't know, stay tuned, because we're going to try and come up with something that, it's been difficult to be consistent, and I tried more than anything else to be fair and reasonable to the applicants who need adjournments at the last minute. But sometimes there's a balancing act that, it doesn't fall where it ought. But that having been said, we will now move forward with the Ranger Estates final subdivision modification. And Jen, that's yours to read in.
Yes. Public hearing notice. Take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Pantago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, August 14th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider the modification of the application of Ranger Estates final subdivision Ocasio pursuant to Chapter 220 subdivision of land and Chapter 193 open space of the East Hampton Town Code to modify the building envelope to include the garage, which was constructed outside the required building envelope as shown in the final subdivision for Ranger Estates. The parcel is lot 6 of an 84.036 acre 24 lot subdivision. The parcel is located on the east side of Peach Farm Lane, East Hampton, and is situated in an A3 residence zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton, and is identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcel 300-113-324.11. Subject application is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 128 Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. A survey prepared by Saska Surveying, dated revised April 22nd, 2024, is available for inspection at the Planning Board offices, 300 Pantago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York. The public hearing will be held live and in person by the Planning Board and will be available electronically by video and teleconferencing, and will be televised on local TV channel 22 and available for live stream on the LTV website, www.ltveh.org. The public shall be permitted to appear in person, but may also provide comments on the matter being heard by calling 351-888-6331. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney or by call-in to the live stream or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Pantago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to planningboard@ehamptonny.gov. All comments must be received by the Planning Board by the date and time of the public hearing, dated July 10th, 2024. Samuel Kramer, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have jurisdiction over this application?
Yes, we do. I reviewed the affidavit of service and posting, and it appears that it was properly noticed, and then you therefore have jurisdiction.
Very well. The way this will work is we'll first hear from the planning department. and they will give us an overview of the application. Then we will throw it open to the public for 3 minutes each, for folks who are in the room who wish to comment. And then we'll go to the telephones. If anybody is on the phone lines wishes to comment, they will have 3 minutes. And then after everyone who's in the room or who's on the phone wishes to comment, we will then give an additional 3 minutes, and that will be the maximum amount of time that anybody will be permitted. So with that, who's got it, Chris or Dan? Or,
Mr. Chairman, I regret to inform you that it appears nobody has it because there is not paperwork in the packets that were distributed that relates to this application.
meaning,
Meaning we just have the notice.
what are we to do? Does that mean that they're gonna have to repost? Is the applicant here?
I'm here. No.
No.
You're not required to hear from the planning department. It's just
No, we're
simple.
not. We
can
do that
start it for
as,
you.
you're, no one would doubt that you'd give an objective and clear-eyed presentation. But, well, let me
The
say this.
notice was read, so.
Sorry? The notice was read. No, I
so-
agree. We will forego the planning department's usual, backgrounder and move directly to public comments. We will have a wrap-up memo after the public hearing is closed, at which time the planning department will be here with comments addressed to the comments from the public. So it's not like we're not going to know what's going on. But for tonight, both council in the audience and council who the town employs for the board's benefit have given us solid advice, and we will go forward with the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard with respect to the Ranger Estates final subdivision modification in the room?
We're talking about the agenda tonight? Anybody wants to be heard?
No, this is only about the public hearing that's been noticed for Ranger Estates final subdivision modification. Is there anybody in the room who wishes to deliver a comment on that matter? Okay, LTV, do we have anybody in line, I'm sorry, not in line, on the phone who wishes to be heard with respect to that application?
There is nobody on the phone lines. They are up and active, and we have no callers.
Okay, in that case, there's no need for a comment from the, from,
Describe the application.
no, that's, well, you see.
It's gonna be objective.
No, I'm certain you would. But the general way we do things is when the applicant, if there are comments, then we give the applicant the opportunity to respond at that time to the comments or come back at another time, depending on how voluminous the comments might be. Since the volume of comments is none, there will be no need for the applicant to make a comment on the comments.
Who says planning board isn't fun?
No, it's regular. I never said it. I've been doing this for 5 years and I'm having nothing but fun. So, Jen, if you would make a motion?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Indeed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed by a vote of 6-0. Okay? Very well. Okay, now we will move on to the Adamadou Cuskasitis application. And that's a wrap-up memo. Ed Krug is unable to be with us tonight, but I don't know how much we are really going to need. So I'll shepherd that along myself. The applicant is here for, I thought so. Okay, so go right ahead and let's have the wrap-up memo. Chris or Dan, who's got it?
Okay, good evening. My name's Chris Decker, planner for the town. This application was last before the planning board on July 10th, 2024, where a public hearing was held. The application seeks to divide the original parcel of 377 Montauk Highway, Wainscott, into 3 lots. Let me pull up the site plan. For For context, the property is across the street from Home Goods and La Caponina off of 27 and Wainscott. The original parcel of 6.18 acres would be divided into 3 lots, each size at approximately 84,000 square feet or 1.93 acres, when easements are excluded as required. The property is zoned A2 residence, where minimum lot areas are required to be the 84,000 square feet. Moving on to the public hearing from July 10th, 4 members of the public submitted written comments. 1 member of the public spoke at the meeting. The hearing was closed that day. The speaker and 1 written comment offered no objections to the proposed project. The others submitted concerns regarding the lack of screening and buffering for neighboring properties and potential mitigation measures to protect the northern long-eared bats and bald eagles which may be present on the site. The agent for the applicant responded to these concerns at the meeting, and I'll summarize these responses and additional analysis from the planning department as followed by topic. So regarding the buffering, the comment received was commenters emphasized the need for greater buffering between the proposed subdivision and the neighboring properties, proposing fencing, scenic easements, and greater setbacks. The applicant responded to these requests by indicating that an offer had been made to erect a fence between the location of the proposed common driveway and the neighboring property, which the neighbor then declined. The commenter who requested further screening declined to further comment at the public hearing, which the planning department assumes indicates an agreement has been reached between the applicant and neighbors. The next issue from the public hearing was threatened special protections. The commenter highlighted the lack of information within the application regarding protections and damage mitigation for threatened species, which I mentioned, potentially located on the site. And the response from the applicant is the agent noted that comments and guidance from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC, are forthcoming, and the planning department recommends that approval or notice of non-jurisdiction from the New York DEC should be a condition of approval required prior to building permit should the board decide to grant it. Moving on to SEQR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. This is an unlisted action pursuant to SEQR in Chapter 128 of Town Code. The planning department has prepared a negative declaration for planning board review. Comments from the fire marshal dated April 1st, 2024 have found submitted information sufficient and no further review is necessary. The items up for approval would be 1, the site plan shown here, prepared by Berlinski Sandvert Land Surveying, dated last revised June 29th, 2023, as well as the driveway plan and profile prepared by TF Engineering PLC, dated last revised February 27, 2024. Moving on to the conditions of approval, the planning board should consider the following conditions of subdivision approval should it choose to grant it. Submission of final approval from the ARB, Architectural Review Board. Submission of a site plan containing approval from the Suffolk County Department of Health, the SCDHS. Submission of comments or approval from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC, prior to the issuance of the building permit for common driveway construction, as well as implementation of project limiting fence during construction to limit clearing and disturbance to areas shown on the map for the common driveway. Easements shall be recorded for the access and utility easement common driveway, scenic easement, and the requirement that all driveways shall maintain 20 feet unobstructed clear width for a minimum of 20 linear feet from the common driveway easement. And the last condition would be that all utilities shall be underground.
Thank you very much, Chris. My understanding is that there was a letter from the neighbor who had previously objected, and in that letter, they stated that they no longer had their objection, that they withdrew that. In the report, in the planning department's report, there's a reference to the ARB, but I don't believe that there is ARB approval that's required, and I see Mr. Samuelson shaking his head in agreement with that. Okay, make sure I have that right. Also, there's a reference to approval from Suffolk County Department of Health, but I think what we also need to have from, as far as Suffolk County is concerned, is approval from the Suffolk County Planning Commission, because this property is on, I would think the reason is that it's on Route 27, and Suffolk County Planning Commission has jurisdiction to weigh in if it's on the state highway. So I think, as I understand it, what has to happen is we have to approve, we have to give them approval tonight, and then it goes to the Suffolk County Planning Commission. And if, assuming that they do make a determination that it's a matter for local determination, then it'll come back to us for final, for a resolution finally approving it. The question I have is, do we need any kind of resolution tonight to move forward, to move us forward to the Suffolk County Planning Commission? So are we going to be taking a vote tonight? I guess we should take a vote tonight saying that we believe the application is ready for approval, subject to those matters that were just raised, and also the business about the Suffolk County Planning Commission. So with that vote, with that clarification, is the application ready for approval?
Yes.
Yes.
And another question we usually ask is, have all the public comments been adequately addressed?
Yes.
In that case, we will move forward. The planning department issues the letter to the Suffolk County Planning Commission, so they'll take care of that. And the wheels of bureaucracy are unpredictable in the length of time that it may take for the Suffolk County plan. And I say that, I'm sorry? You'll get it. I say that as a former commissioner of the Suffolk County Planning Commission. God bless him. So we will, but we'll see this application at least one more time. So thank you very much. Okay. The next matter that we have on is the 3 Mile Harbor Affordable Housing application. And Dan, is that going to be yours? Okay, very good. And I see the Suffolk County Planning, sorry. I don't know if that counts as a promotion or a demotion, but I should say I see the town housing authority here. Right? Got that right?
Yes.
Okay,
With our developer partner, Georgia Green Ventures,
very good. Welcome again. Thank you.
and the engineer, R&M.
Welcome also. Thank you. Okay, go right ahead, Dan.
All right, thank you very much. Let me just get the rules up quick. What? All right. So just to provide a refresher to the board, again, this is a modification application for a 50-unit affordable housing project located on 3 Mile Harbor Road in East Hampton. This project was, the modification is proposing several changes to the project site, including movement of structures, provisions to drainage, provisions to landscaping and clearing. This project was recently reviewed at the July 10th, 2024 Planning Board meeting, and the applicant has since, submitted revised plans and a cover letter responding to many of the comments made by the board during that previous meeting, which we're going to go through, I guess, tonight. So to begin off, let me just pull up the site plan. All right. So the first comment that the board wanted to address during the previous review had to do with stormwater drainage. We indicated during last time that our town consultant engineer had gone out to the site to review the as-built conditions of the stormwater drainage system compared to the plan that was proposed. He indicated previously that the as-built conditions were substantially conformed to the proposed drainage plan and grading plan, with the exception of some of the structures near Building 1, which is the proposed first building, which I'll try to zoom in here. Hope if it loads. First building here, and you can see that the structures that were specifically indicated are highlighted on the plans. In light of these, inconsistencies, the town engineer consultant asked the applicants to field verify the structures and if necessary, correct in a manner that conforms with the proposed designs and the plans. And in response to this, the applicants have gone out and have indicated that they've gone out and field verified these structures and made adjustments so that the plans and the as-built conditions are consistent with each other. Now, with respect to the resubmitted plans, the town engineer, consultant engineer did re-review the plans submitted and had requested kind of provide reasoning for these changes. It was indicated that some of the elevations of the structures have been altered since the previous submission with this one. Basically, they've been raised, and the applicants have explained it was to provide a proper elevation change from the finished floor elevation of building 1 and the surrounding grades, while also accounting for safety of pedestrians who may be using this area. With respect to the changes made, the town engineer found these to be, the response was acceptable, and the amended grading demolition plan and the drainage plans were satisfactory. However, there was a recommendation made that an as-built survey be required as a condition of approval that demonstrates to ensure to the board that the constructed improvements are consistent with the plans that have been submitted for going forward. I guess, yeah, sorry. All right, next point of discussion has to do with the natural rock swale. Previously, we indicated that there was a request to have these specifically shown throughout the submitted plans. We indicated that it was only shown on some of the plans and not all of them, and we asked it to be consistently revised so that all the plans would show the location of the natural rock swale. Since that's was received, the applicants have successfully complied with this request. They've updated all the plans to show the specific location of the natural rock swale. Having a little trouble here zooming in for some reason, the PowerPoint, but I promise assure you it's been provided, we find this to be acceptable. In addition to the swale itself, the board also encouraged that the applicant propose additional vegetation to further prohibit the area of the natural stone swale from public access. And if I pull up the proposed landscaping plan, the swale is kind of located right from the sewage treatment plant going towards the what? Yeah, it's okay. Oh, good. Let's see if that works, and maybe I can actually. There we go. Okay. So here, just because now it's working, now you zoom in, you see the swale is kind of pointed out right here. The applicants have proposed to put vegetation along the natural swale. Specifically, they've indicated that there's northern bayberry along the swale. Which is 30 additional plantings have been provided throughout. Throughout it. And we, planning department found this to be acceptable, and the planning board just whether or not they agree with us that the vegetation here that is proposed is acceptable for additional protection. Going forward, there was a request last time. The applicants indicated one of the major changes of this project was the relocation of the bus stop shelter. The planning board previously found the location of the shelter to be appropriate. However, the plans elevations had yet to be provided, as the applicants these were still kind of in the works. The applicants have since submitted those elevations, which are up, now shown on the screen now. And we, in terms of the actual size, dimensions, and the town's dimensional regulations, the planning department found that these are they comply with regulations for accessory structures within the town code. We also did advise to the applicant that ARB review would be required for the structure, and that application has since been submitted and has an actual scheduled meeting date coming up in the near future. So for this comment, and see if there's any further comment with respect to the bus stop shelter. Going forward, we had another comment regarding the meandering path that's located within the northern yard of the site. Specifically during the last review, there was a recommendation the applicant should propose additional plantings along the meandering path to maximize public safety while using this plant. So there was a couple of changes throughout this as part of this most recent submission. When it was first received, there was one of the landscaping plans indicated that there's going to be several plantings proposed along this, specifically in this this area here now, which looks mostly consists of pollinator gardens. There was originally a proposal for 8 eastern red cedar trees in order to provide a double buffer row of trees along this area, and there's going to be 13 total around the curve to increase public safety. However, as we kind of indicated during the previous review, this area is consistent of steep slopes that basically throughout kind of along it here, and I'll try to pull up the grading plan to give a board a better view of what kind of slopes we're discussing. And after discussing with Natural Resource Department and the proposal made, it was indicated that steep slopes aren't typically a suitable location for areas such as large trees to be planted. And because the placement of trees wasn't consistent with our previous recommendations for natural shrubbery along it, we did recommend that we emailed the applicant and actually discussed with them, potentially recommending that these be removed and replaced with either native shrubbery directly adjacent to the meandering path. Now, the applicants have responded by removing the trees. However, as opposed to native the shrubberies, they've actually proposed pollinator gardens throughout this. Now, they did submit a cover letter indicating that we kind of explain the reasoning for the pollinator gardens, which we'll get further into as it goes on. But again, it was basically saying that a lot of these have been they've indicated that a lot of these have been planted already and are beginning to take root, and they didn't want to, disturb what's been there. So with respect to this, we still recommended, I guess, obviously we saw the recommended native shrubbery. However, we put into the planning board decision whether or not they, we asked the applicants to explain if there are concerns or constraints with complying with the comments we previously indicated, and if the planning board should discuss if they find this plan itself to be acceptable in lieu of the native shrubbery that we previously recommended. So going forward from here, we did have kind of a bigger discussion point last time, had to do with the clearing on the property. There was previous recommendations that, for the project to, not sure why it's not working with me here. For the project to, the original resolution indicated that there'd be 243,000 square feet of clearing, and recommended to see if the applicants could revegetate to the point to meet that original clearing area. Now, as it's indicated, in the provided memo from the department, there was a recommendation to work. The applicants stated that they intended to work with us and the Natural Resources Department regarding clearing and revegetation to kind of address some of the concerns going on. We did have that meeting it was July 16th, just after the original planning board meeting, to kind of discuss this. And there were several discrepancies that we kind of had to clarify with the applicants. So first has to do with the actual calculation itself. So the original resolution in 2021, the plans that were approved indicate that the proposed clearing area was 243,000 square feet, but the actual drawn clearing, that actual clearing line drawn on the map was actually found to be larger than this area. What happened was that the proposed clearing area did not include areas that were already cleared on the project site. So it was more that the additional clearing that was proposed beyond what was existing, rather than the overall cleared area proposed for the project site. So, as we've discussed with the applicants and met with them, they've gone ahead and remeasured the actual clearing area as drawn on the map from that 2021 resolution and came up with a number of 279,700 square feet. So as part of this application, they're now requesting or proposing a cleared area to keep the original line that was drawn, but is now at 279,700 square feet, as opposed to the 243,000 square feet that was previously indicated on the old plan. In addition to this, however, though, we also did ask for clarification for the existing cleared area. And, it has been indicated the site was, current existing cleared area is 289,000, just over 289,000 square feet. And their plans was to revegetate back to the original approved line as part of the old plan. Which is that, again, the 279,000. So we pull up the landscaping plan for reference here. So after reviewing kind of what's been submitted and our discussions with them, we did go ahead and independently measure through tools that we had available, the clearing line that they showed, and had come up with a number that was very close to the 279,000 square feet. So we do believe that to be an accurate number in terms of the original plans that were approved and plus what they're currently requesting now. Now, although we found no specific issue with the applicant's request to correct the proposed clearing area calculations, we did also recommend that the applicants put forth their best effort to revegetate areas of the site, particularly given that the already approved clearing area of 243,000 square feet was already substantially larger than what would normally be approved here, which could be up to 80,000 square feet without site plan special permit, approval. And the fact that, a lot of areas of the project site are currently consisted of pollinator gardens, where native vegetation could potentially have been proposed. So the Natural Resources Department also, who was also in that part of that discussion, did submit a letter as well, providing their comments, and they filed a recommendation to bring the site closer to 260,000 square feet as opposed to 279 they're currently requesting. However, they were in favor of being in support of a revegetation plan that is implemented at a later date, since at the moment there is current financial restraints brought to us by the applicant, and we're in favor of basically more of a phase plan going forward. So overall, it's our recommendation the plan we discuss whether or not they find the proposed 279,000 square feet by the applicant to be acceptable, or whether additional vegetation areas could be considered as part of this. Now, we did note that really at this moment, the plan board, tonight, the plan board should decide on, or not tonight, but in general, the decision point has to do with the area to be revegetated, but the specific details of it, such as the number of plantings, the quantities, the spacing, are things that are not yet currently compliant with town standards for revegetation, are going to be trying to work out between the planning department, natural resources department, and the applicants. So for that, we're kind of recommending that the submission of a revegetation plan that's accessible to both the planning department and the natural resources department be considered as a condition of approval. And the planning board should discuss whether or not they agree with that condition. Now, with respect to the pollinator seed mix itself, as we I began to talk about a little bit before, that the applicants did provide a current letter that's basically indicating that a lot of the, let me backtrack a little bit. We previously did recommend that the pollinator seed garden itself be revised to include more perennial species so that there's more year-round coverage throughout this. Now, the applicants have responded to this by incorporating more perennial species throughout their pollinator seed mix. However, since our original submission, as I've indicated before, a lot of these have been planted already, and I can try to show, I believe I have the letter, available. I'm not, there you go. You can kind of see, again, what those are beginning to look like and how they're kind of shown throughout the project site on their submission. Now, they were planted, and going forward. These are current photos. Yes, this was provided by, I believe, their landscape architect, landscape architect, showing kind of the site, and these are the pollinator gardens that they're proposing. I guess you can see a little better in this photo here. So with respect to this, as you can see, many of these have been planted already. And we kind of recommend that in terms of the actual species itself, that it's because they're already planted, it's not really warranted to go and, add additional perennial species because they are there. However, we are advising kind of the applicant and also discussing the planning board that, the applicant ensure that a maintenance plan for these pollinator gardens be implemented, to maintain their long-term health and species diversity, specifically because, extensive maintenance may be required for this type of garden to be planted, and, just to ensure that things such as invasive species don't infiltrate it or, ruin potential growth or sitting of this. Natural Resources also gave comments on this, saying that it usually takes several years for this type of mix or garden to be fully implemented, and just kind of reiterating our point that just to make sure that if this is, be proposed and finalized, just make sure there's a maintenance plan ensured. And, just for a point of reference, the requirement to maintain landscaping and site plans is common. It's recommended that it be included as a condition of approval as part of this project. Now, finally, the very last major comment we had to do with the site lighting. We indicated last time that the There were several changes done to the site lighting plan, mostly had to do with changing bollards and due to changing of paths around the site. Now, the applicants, we had our most biggest comment was just indicating where in the plans these were provided. And although it's a little hard to see on the screen, they're now little red indicators showing exactly what lighting's been changed. They've clarified the numbers of lighting proposed, and there's been no changes to the fixtures themselves. So we found no issue with the site lighting plan, and we recommend, plan board discuss whether or not they agree with the planning department that this is acceptable. So overall, in conclusion, I know there's a lot said there, but so we recommend, planning board, the main kind of decision point is discussing whether or not the clearing area is acceptable at 279,000 square feet as presented, or if the clearing area should be reduced. A revegetation plan that includes appropriate species, spacing, and plant qualities is a recommended condition of approval, as is the as-built conditions for the stormwater drainage and the maintenance plan for the pollinator gardens. Otherwise, besides these issues, we are recommending that the modification application is otherwise complete and ready for approval. And yeah, that's where we ended off.
Quite a few, judging by the resolution amending approval, which will presumably take up after the discussion. I should have said that earlier. There were quite a few changes, many small and some bigger, but I appreciate the thoroughness of this memo in addressing every one of them. So, does the applicant wish to be heard with respect to the proposal? Or we can move right into our conversation if you.
You'll have an opportunity during your conversation to also speak.
Well, we'll ask questions of you, but I'm gonna ask that you not interject during. So if you had any points that you wanted to raise right now that perhaps you thought weren't adequately addressed, or that you'd like to give some background or color to, this would be your chance. Otherwise, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Cortese.
I'm gonna do, yes.
There you go. Almost.
Right up there. Okay. Very good. I can't help myself.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Dave Gallo. I am president of Georgia Green Ventures, and want to thank the chair and the planning board for all of the work that you guys have had on this particular project and listening and working with us on our comments, and also to the planning staff and to the other members of the planning department. The meeting that we had a few weeks ago was incredibly enlightening, and it was super helpful for us in terms of actually understanding. At Georgia Co, we care deeply about our reputation. We love building affordable housing. We believe affordable housing has a place in every community, and we're proud of the reputation that we've earned when we develop, construct, and then the future property management of it. When I had, specifically on the clearing issue, had become aware of it, I was quite surprised where the numbers actually were, because I do visit the site and I'm there, and didn't really look like, in my own, no engineer, but in my estimation, that amount of clearing was in fact done, which is why we had went back and said, okay, let's look at the facts. Are the numbers right? Which is why, as Danny had mentioned, we went back and recalculated the site, and we saw that it was at 279,000, and that it was in fact incorrect, which made a lot more sense, because we're not perfect. I mean, I've said before, in affordable housing, the rents, they're not going up. Right. So when, over clearing or under clear, right, we want to build to the plan that we've presented to a planning board and to the town. That's what we want to do. Doesn't always happen, but that's what our intentions are. There's no other motivation. Even for the subcontractor, I wanted to understand what the facts were, right? Because we at Georgica didn't do the work. We hired someone to do it, but that was a lump sum contract. So over clearing would in fact mean they did more work than they were actually paid for, which sometimes it goes the other way, try to do less work for what they're paid for. So in any event, I hope that the number that it actually is, and I'm happy to hear that the planning department did in fact confirm that our number of 279 or thereabouts is in fact the accurate number.
It's not.
I heard that it was fairly close.
280.
Oh, 289. Sorry. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah. 289. That's why Crystal was looking at me funny. So
Yeah, and we measured the proposed.
Okay. So I think, yes.
Let's just cut right to the chase.
Yes,
Here are the numbers. You submitted the number of 243 originally. That's what you stated the clearing would be.
Right.
Okay. As it turns out, when you measured the plan that was submitted as well, that number was 279. Let's round it up to 280. So
Correct.
243 was really 280 is what was represented on the plan. Right now, it's 289. Now, the Natural Resources Department has looked at it, and they're willing, and I go along with it, as a compromise, they're willing to go down to 260. Again, I'm rounding numbers. So it's at 280 is on the plan. Right now, it's 290, let's call it 290. And the Natural Resources Department will accept 260. And I agree with that. Are you willing to go along with the 260 number? Because that's where I'm.
no, because it's not the right number. The number should have been correct from the beginning, granted. Our engineer, the calculation was done wrong.
But when you say it's not the right number,
It's wrong.
why is it the right number?
Because it was miscalculated or misrepresented on the site plan. It's 280, and we calculated it. The planning department has also confirmed that's the basis that we should be held against. In addition, it's 280,000. That's the number that we need to be held against. What I would also say is we're building 100% affordable housing. We have built 100% affordable housing at 3.6 units per acre. That is an incredibly tough thing to do. Okay, when you look at density per acre and what other towns, municipalities, when we work, we typically get 10 units per acre. Financing 100% affordable housing at the level we did it is incredibly difficult, and we did it, and we built a beautiful, beautiful project. But and I know there's discussions now within the town talking about increasing the density per acre, perhaps to 10 for senior housing, which is a good spot to be. It's typical. But what we pulled off and what we built, we otherwise could have, under another scenario, the clearing would have been much, much more at 6 units to the acre or 8 units to the acre. All I'm asking is that we use the right number, right? Whatever that right number is, right? We calculated 280. Okay, sounds like the planning department confirmed it's 280. Please hold us to 280, okay?
Well, I'm asking what is the 280 based on percentage? So we're at 280, when you say hold us to 280, I mean, I don't know how we got to 243. I just assumed it was a percentage of acreage and what's allowed in the town and, and all of that.
No, 243 was the number that they stated was going to be the clearing.
Okay, so what
And
is,
that's the number that we involved in using.
right, so but what is like the percentage allowed based on our town code? I guess that's what I'm
The
asking.
amount of clearance
Less
that's
than
allowed is
100,000.
80,000.
Less than 100,000,
It's
okay.
80,000 square feet.
Okay,
So we're
So
talking
we're-
about nearly
all
a
right.
full
all right.
acre.
So we're way
That
off. I just couldn't remember if we had,
Right, but that doesn't
Allowed.
really,
Right.
80,000 is what would be allowed on this property.
yeah,
That's
okay.
the maximum.
Right.
But nobody's, is thinking 80,000 square feet. That's just unreasonable. The number that was submitted, and everybody, in all the meetings that we had,
243, 9.
we were approving a plan that called for 243,000 square feet of
Yeah,
clearing.
yeah.
Then when somebody at some point, I'm not sure the dates, they actually calculated the plan that was submitted, not the number that they stated would be cleared, but the actual plan. When you measure the plan, that plan showed that the clearing would be not 243, but 280,000.
Okay.
That's where the problem is. The problem is that we were all thinking 243, and now they're saying that the right number is 280, and that's what we should agree. Now, we've come all the way here thinking that it was going to be 243. We knew at one point that there was going to be a problem, that there was a discrepancy, but it was never resolved, or it was always, the can was kicked down the road, we'll talk to the planning department. and
It was always like 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, if my recollection serves. So,
No,
do I have that wrong?
it was just,
We just didn't, because I remember there was, at one point, I think I remember, there was a conversation about a much lower number than 30,000, 37,000 square foot difference. between 243 and 280, which is nearly an acre. Well,
But I also want to say, and I want to reiterate what you're saying, because I am sympathetic to a lot of what you said. This is an affordable housing project. So it's something that the town is in dire need of, and we welcome it, and we're very happy that it's being done. So we don't want to be obstructive in getting this done on a timely basis. But the fact of the matter is that you did submit a number of 243. I know the plan wasn't 243, but you submitted a number of 243. So now to go to 280, why isn't a compromise at 260 a fair thing to do?
It's, in my opinion, we should use the number that is the right number. If the right number was, if the number, we went back and recalculated and it was 260, I'd say we should use 260. If it was 250, we should use 250. But the number is 280. And then, and
that's what was represented.
that's what should have been represented on the plan, but the engineer made a mistake. The number that should have been represented was 279,800. There, when we build, I want to answer your question because it's a fair question. When we close and fund affordable housing, right, there's no other resources to do this. So for us to go back and have to revegetate what's being asked for is going to be an enormous hardship for us. Enormous. We get funded by the state. We had received some county money. There's a private mortgage on it, but there's no ability.
Just to put a number on that, you want these costs.
Roughly $60,000.
Let's say we go to 260 versus 243. That's about 20,000 square feet. I'm sorry, 260 versus 280, which is where you want to be. You want to be at 280. I'm asking for 260. The difference is 20,000. I understand that it's $5 a square foot, so it would cost you about $100,000 more to get down to 260. What kind of hardship is $100,000?
We absolutely don't have that. I mean, these projects are done, and when we build them, and at the density we built this at, these numbers were extraordinarily tight. We just got this project approvable by the state and to get it done. And at the level of finishes, the hardy siding, the cabinets that we installed, we built the best project that possibly built for the dollars that we were awarded and funded. And we compete heavily with the state year after year, and we've made East Hampton a priority so that this town gets their fair share of affordable housing money. There's, in addition, talk about what's happened to us, in terms of the project. We closed on the project, interest rates were 3%. They rose to 8%. I mean, that increase has been an enormous hardship for us. And we're working with the state and other governmental entities to say, hey, please give us a hand here. This is not the intention of the program and the project. Although as the developer, we have funded it. We've continued the project to move. All I'm asking is I'd like to use the number that is calculated and should have been the number from the beginning. And whatever that number is, if you'd like to hold us accountable to it, I'd like you to say, when I calculate the 291,000, I think is where we kind of ended up, 11,000 more. It's 1.6% more than what we asked for. It's de minimis.
Well, how are you getting that? I want to, because I mean, I'm no mathematician, but it sounds like the difference that we're talking about is the number that I gave before, at least in my mind, is 37,000 square feet more of clearing than we had anticipated. How is?
No, so
I don't think you'd agree that would be de minimis.
No. So we're looking at 10,000 more over the entirety of the site. That's 1.6%.
10,000 more than what?
But yeah.
So we're at, we believe the right number, as you had mentioned before, is 280,000, which has been confirmed by your planning department. We cleared 289,000. I think that's where we're at. So
that's the current clearing.
Correct. So we believe that 9,000 to 10,000 more was over cleared. So did we over clear? Yes, based upon the number that it should have been from the get-go to what we did now. And by the way, we don't have the ability when we build housing like this to do tree by tree surveys. Okay? right? We have very limited dollars with line items that the state patrols where we have a certain amount of money we could spend on architects and engineers and surveyors. We can't go out and survey a 14-acre site, particularly this portion of it, 8 acres. There was rocks, there were roads. To be within this percentage is actually really, really very, very close. You know, I knew when I was told and I heard the numbers, it just didn't sit well with me because I knew I'd been there. I could see, I mean, the clearing doesn't look, was it perfect? By the way, there were other things done, which Jeremy and I had talked about that should have been done better during construction, which I mentioned to Jeremy and, during the process, we will, certainly, we rectified it and will continue to. But with respect to this, 10,000 square feet more than the number that it should have been on the plan originally, which is de minimis. And, if there is, we had offered and said, in terms of where we were, we know that we were 10,000 over, but we'll revegetate 12,000. So an additional 2,000 square feet in the nature of saying, listen, we know we went over a little bit, we'll do a little bit more just because we wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable and happy.
Let me just interrupt you. Did you mention that the planning department agreed with a statistic of the amount that was cleared? Was that what was just stated?
I think, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so what we did is we measured the plans as submitted. So we didn't measure the 289, we measured the 279 proposed.
Right.
Basically concurring with their statement that the drawn line was like approved as 2021 was close to the 279,000. We couldn't make it, specifically as accurate in confirming it, but we did measure to ensure that basically just to see if what they're.
I just want to make sure that there's.
We confirmed their error, is how I would put it.
It was a mistake.
Yes.
It was a mistake.
Yeah, it's in the memo,
And Chair, Dan had mentioned it when he was here. I wouldn't speak and represent something. He had mentioned it during his introductory remarks, so. But by the way, when he did, I was like, whew, okay, I was happy that it was confirmed and in fact, and it was an error. And I wish the error was, because there's been a lot of discussion about this, and I wish we would have caught it earlier, because I think this would have been a lot easier conversation than where we are now, up against trying to get the buildings completed, get people in by this, by the school year. So we want to get it in.
I would like to just jump in and, sorry.
Yes, okay.
I just, by way of clarification, I would like to explain the difference between 243 and 279 and change. This was originally 2 parcels. There was a single-family residence with a horseshoe drive and a cleared backyard, so already 3/4 of an acre was cleared. When the plan was submitted, the line was the line, but when it was enumerated in numerals on the plan, 243 was the calculation that we intended to clear, and we did not add that approximately 3/4 of an acre that was already cleared. So that's why we are saying that 279 and change is what the original approved plan showed, but we didn't, when it was enumerated, it was written down as 243, not 279 and change. It wasn't clear on the. Exactly. And we did go a little over, but not to the tune of. Right. It took us a while to figure out why we all had different numbers. And it's because of the single-family residence that was at 286 3 Mile Harbor Road. That was already cleared. We didn't enumerate that on the plan, but it was reflected on the actual plan itself. So that's.
This is already in the record, right?
Yeah, it was in our discussion in the meeting. Yeah, we submitted it. Yeah,
The aerial.
It's aerial, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yes, you said they said.
You've seen this already?
Yes, yeah.
Then we can look at it.
Big giant ones.
Yeah, so,
Thank you. Yeah.
Mike, it's kind of a two-parter here. So we're saying that currently we're at 289,000 square feet cleared already. You're willing to revegetate to the 280 or 279.7 in one of the plus 20%?
Mm-hmm.
So how much would that be?
12,000.
So 12,000 instead of 10,000?
Yes.
Okay, so the Natural Resources Department seems to indicate that 260,000, give or take, is kind of like the number they're aiming towards and would be acceptable to them and the planning department. And there is mention in here someplace, I can't remember where, about a phased revegetation. Would you consider that, would we consider that as a condition perhaps, so that maybe this year it's it goes down to 280, but over the next several years they revegetate?
As a cost issue, to ameliorate the cost, is that?
Yeah.
The applicant doesn't seem to think it's going to.
So, we have to submit annual budgets to the state.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very hard for us to include the way these typical projects work. You submit your proposed plans and budgets to the state. It's a 900-page application. If it gets approved, then once you do it, capital expenditures like that would otherwise, the state would opine, they'd want to know why, and they would not approve it out of the replacement reserve or any other operations. And the rents that are designed when they are built and designed to just cover the operating expenses, but not additional expenses.
So it would impact the rent calculations?
It would impact the property operations, and it wouldn't be approved. It wouldn't be something that we could put into the operating budget that we submit annually to the state.
All right. If you don't have anything else, and I guess it's kind of good that you stood up and that's all aired. I'm going to let you continue to take us through.
Okay.
Is that helpful, the revegetation plan?
I didn't have that.
We have it up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, though.
Yeah, this is a tough one because, a mistake was made by the applicant. And normally I would be very firm in holding him to that number. Actually, it's a compromise number, so it's even a higher number than what he submitted. But this isn't any ordinary application. This is an application for 50 affordable housing units, which are a drop in the bucket in what we need in East Hampton. So I have to weigh the detriments of additional clearing of 11,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet, versus putting a major obstacle, which I'm convinced it would be a major financial obstacle for this project to go forward. And given that, I have to land on the side of forgiving the clearance requirements and just letting it go. But the other thing that was brought up by the planning department, which I would hope you would agree to, given my generosity, is that the pollinator garden needs to be maintained. Would you agree to a covenant stating that would be, and that it doesn't get mowed and turns into a grass field?
Yes. Yeah.
So if they agree to that, that's my opinion, and that's what I recommend.
Very good.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely thinking that we could do a phased project, but your explanation, I buy it, so. It sounds very complicated to do a phased.
Okay.
The 12,000 square foot offer sounds great. More than I expected, so.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that too. And I think, also the pollinator garden, if you're going to maintain that, what happens to that in the winter?
With that, well, podium.
No, because I mean, once it dies out, it looks.
At Gansett Meadow, the blooms are phased. When All the blooms are done somewhere around October, November. Gansett Meadow is in Amagansett. It's the property that we previously developed. The community raved about the pollinator garden and the meadow. That was very well received. We wait until it's time to thatch it, and we have a landscaping crew come in, thatch it, pull out all the bugwort. Somebody mentioned invasive species. You're going to get bugwort. It just is like everywhere now. So we thatch it, weed it, let it rest for the winter, and then hit it again in the spring. So many of the seeds are, although they're annual, they're self-seeding, and that's why we wait to deadhead it until those seeds are mature. So we've successfully, for the past 4+ years, maintained the meadow at Gansett Meadow. We'll have a similar management plan. We already have a similar management plan for the green at Gardener's Point.
I completely understand the complexities of dealing with the state and, for money. So, yeah, pollinator garden, as long as that's maintained, I think this is a fair compromise.
Bruce, I didn't
Oh, yeah,
cut you
you
off, did I?
skipped Bruce.
I didn't cut you off.
No, that's good, yeah, thank you.
But yeah, I personally, I had been caught up on the 243 versus 279 or 89, whatever the problem number was. And that kind of an explanation that it didn't include the house. That rings true.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I'm certain of it. And so with that, I think we're all on board. So I'm going to run through the questions. Almost all of them are tied in one way or another to the resolution. After we go through the questions, if we have a consensus, I'll ask you to read in the resolution. Does the planning board agree that the as-built survey submitted should include sufficient details regarding the elevations of drainage structures to respond to the town engineering consultant's comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Does the planning board find the protective vegetation around the natural rock swale to be acceptable, or additional vegetation should be provided in order to further prohibit public access from this area?
It's acceptable.
Acceptable?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the planning board find the proposed bus shelter plans and elevation to be acceptable?
Yes.
Does the planning board wish to require the submission of a revegetation plan which meets the town's standards as a condition of approval?
Yes, for the additional 12,000, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll show where the new.
It'll show, right, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay? We could add that to the memo, all right? We'll add that to the memo, okay? Does the planning board find the proposed clearing of 279,000 square feet to be acceptable, or should additional areas of revegetation be provided?
I think it's
278.
260, is the number 268?
278.
Well, it's 289 minus 12.
12, so it'd be
279 minus 12 is
277.
270.
Whatever that.
Let's pick a number, folks.
277.
277, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
277, yeah.
It's 277,900, the number that you are working with.
Right,
Yeah.
because if you use my current clearing minus 12,000, that's the number you want to get to, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're correct. Yeah, but they wanted to hold us to the 2,000.
I want to get a number that
12,000, yeah.
this board is going to approve, particularly in view of the moving target nature
So
of the
it's
number.
289,
No more mistakes.
So it's
289,
289 minus 12. 289 minus 12 is 277.
277 change.
Change, right, whatever the.
More or less, 277,000.
Yep.
I want the change.
Well, what's the more or less percentage?
That's the right number. I'm not doing that. All right, 277,000
Is it
more or
exactly
less.
12,000 that you're, is it exactly 12,000 that you're reducing the cluster?
Yes.
So then it would be 277,931.
Thank you.
Want that? All right, I'm going to do it again. Does the planning board find the proposed clearing area of 279,931 square feet?
277.
Did I do it?
You said it right.
77,931.
Thank you, 277, all right, let's take two. Does the planning board, take three. Does the planning board find the proposed clearing area of 277,931 square feet to be acceptable.
Yes.
Yes.
6-0. Does the planning board find the proposed site lighting plan to be acceptable to the project site?
Yes.
And does the planning board agree with the planning department that the modification application is complete and ready for approval?
Yes.
Magic words, yes. Okay. With that.
He's going to read the resolution.
Go right ahead. No, you absolutely don't. Just say, take the paragraph that says request from, well, give us the caption with the Suffolk County tax map and the request to modify as indicated.
In the matter of the application of 3 Mile Harbor Affordable Housing Site Plan Special Permit, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-122-7-19 and 20, I have read the resolution amending approval, which is the request to modify the resolution adopted October 21st, 2021, granting site plan approval and special permit approval. And I move for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Right, all right. Okay, all right.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming in. Good luck with it.
Yes, it's a little dirty because it's my last one.
All right, we are going to move on now to the Sylvan Realty matter. Sharon, you've got that. I believe that Jeremy is going to be covering in Tina's absence tonight. And Mr. Whalen, you're the applicant on that? Very well. Before our planning director gets started, I figure this is an appropriate time to
So starting in on the memo.
No, not so fast, not so fast. It may or may not be known to those watching on TV who follow these things that Jeremy is moving on to the private sector. And I will say that I've been working closely with Jeremy for over 2 years now, and it's been a pleasure. Jeremy's a real pro. He knows this stuff, this planning stuff, but no, he really knows the area well. His input and has always been valuable. I'm not in the planning department, but from what I can see, it looks like it's a well-run department. It certainly, I think, has benefited from his tenure, and speaking for myself, and I gather the rest of the board, we're going to miss you. So good luck out there, and you're going to go from success to success. Now for your swan song. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was very kind and appreciated. Thank you. All right. In the matter of Sylvan Realty LLC, this is a site plan special permit modification request. The Suffolk County tax map number is 161-4-9, and the subject property is 44 3 Mile Harbor Road in East Hampton. The background information here is that the application has been made to modify the approved site plan for the subject application. The planning board issued site plan approval on October 3rd, 2023 to allow a change in use and expansion of a non-conforming building by proposing a first floor retail space, second floor office space, two second-story floor affordable apartments, paved parking areas, and extensive landscaping. The approved project consists of 6,681 square feet of first floor retail space for wet retail, described as a market, 3,200 square feet of a second floor office space, two-story two second-floor apartments at a size of 5,355 square feet, or two second-floor apartments, and 5,355 square feet of basement. The parcel is zoned as neighborhood business and is 100% cleared of naturally occurring vegetation, has mature deciduous trees and shrubs along the side and rear of the property. The existing building is pre-existing non-conforming to setbacks under current code. The proposed modification is to allow the construction of a new 2,650 square foot basement and a larger circulation area than originally proposed. 768 feet is proposed currently, whereas 585 square feet was previously approved. The previous proposal had assumed the proposed 2,650 square foot basement was existing. However, it is not. So, issues for discussion. SECRA, the planning department recommends that the proposed changes are not expected to modify the original SECRA determination that was issued. The planning board should determine if they concur. Basement changes, and this is really, I think, the heart of the conversation that you're being asked to focus on this evening. As referenced above, during the initial review of the application, the basement was assumed to be existing. The entire building was legally pre-existing and had a setback of 7.8 feet from the eastern property line and 20 feet from the northern property line in the area of the basement. So, Dan, do you mind just sharing perhaps an aerial of and we can just clarify for the board exactly where we're talking about those setbacks. So if you, perfect, thank you. So if you just kind of wave your mouse around on this corner here, you can see that that's the most constrained corner of the proposed to essentially maintain that 7.8 feet there is where that choke point is. In discussions related to concern about the scale of the project and non-conforming nature of the structure relative to current code, the planning board had sought a building inspector determination to confirm that the proposed action qualified as a reconstruction. The building inspector had confirmed it did based on the understanding of the project at that time, namely that there was an existing basement under the entirety of the building. However, with the latest development that the basement does not presently exist, and if you don't mind putting up that color-coded item, there you go. And I'll sort of step you through this in a moment, but the question remains if the construction of the basement can be considered or it should be considered reconstruction. So new building area is now requested in the setback zone. Setbacks in the neighborhood business zone are doubled when adjacent to residential districts, as is the case in the eastern property boundary, meaning that the setbacks there should be 50 feet, whereas with the construction of the new basement, it would be a setback at the same location as the first floor, namely the 7.8 feet that currently exists. There were no dimensions on the site plan submitted for review, but based on aerial imagery and the previous site plans, the distance is believed to be approximately 7.8 feet, as noted previously. The applicant should submit an accurate site plan for the file that shows the property setbacks with the basement accurately depicted. The planning department recommends that the following code sections are applicable, and I won't read for you in the entirety of those code sections, but I will cite them for you. So per section 255-1-20, this is the definition of gross floor area and includes information about how calculations can and should be made. In addition, section 255-1-20, which is floor area, habitable or livable, and how that is defined. Finally, section 255-1-42 regarding non-conforming buildings and structures. The applicant has indicated that the basement will be utilized for storage and mechanicals only. And so I'm going to pause here for a second and ask you to direct your attention to the schematic that's on the screen. So on the left-hand side, you have what the applicant has shared with us is a depiction of the structure, basically the footprint of the structure, but cut down to the basement level of the former approval of your body, the planning board here. So when the application was last in front of you and you issued an approval, there was a shared understanding that this was what was being approved. And subsequent to that, it has now been understood that the area that is in red on the right schematic actually is not, it is a slab on grade, meaning there is no basement underneath it. There is a basement, if you look at, again, the left side of the schematic, the sort of mustard color there is an existing basement. It is in place. There is a partial basement under this building. This is not a situation where there's no basement. There's a partial basement. And so that portion of the building currently has a basement, and the gray portion is where, again, it's slab on grade. So if you now move your attention to the right side of the page, the current proposal for a modification that is up for your consideration this evening is really focused on the red area principally, which the applicant is proposing for reasons of storage and mechanicals only, and that will come up again in the memo a little later on, that they would actually propose to now dig a basement and build a basement where one does not exist. And the green portion that is currently a basement would actually be repurposed and essentially modified to create what would amount to a crawl space in the area where there currently is a basement. So the final piece of this that I'll direct your attention to is the blue area. There's a reference to a slightly larger area for circulation. This is basically what allows somebody to move from one floor of the building to the next. And it was determined upon further review that this was a little too constrained, and so the applicant has proposed that there would be a minor modification to that as well. And you can just sort of comparing the relative size of the two blue areas, see the extent of that. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll dive back into the memo unless you want to pause there. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So the applicant says that the original plan we approved, the size of the base was 50, I think it was 5,300 square feet. Now, it's about 2/3. Can you just show on the right side there, which is the now revised plan, how we get from 53 to 2/3 of 5,300?
So my assumption is that the bigger number, the 5,000 plus square foot number, comes from adding the 2120 number in the yellow area to the 2650 number in the gray area. That's where the 5,000, the approximately 5,500 number came from. Now you can see that actually they're in what was the mustard yellow area and now is indicated by the green area. That no longer would be fairly described as basement. That would become crawl space and would not be able to be used for either storage or mechanicals or otherwise.
Got it.
Okay. All right. So the applicant has indicated that the basement will be utilized for storage and mechanicals only. Therefore, while the proposed basement is not an expansion of GFA presently, and this it really gets into the definition of gross floor area. If you are using a basement for only storage and mechanicals, in a commercial setting under our code, that does not qualify as gross floor area, and the applicant has correctly made that point. However, it raises a concern about a potential future occupant of the site wishing to change the use of that space to be other than storage and mechanicals, and questions arise about what criteria would apply at that point. Therefore, if the planning board were considering an approval for the new basement, the planning department recommends that the applicant be required to record a covenant on the site which requires the basement be utilized for storage and mechanicals only in perpetuity. The planning department also recommends that the planning board consider if expansion of the building, although underground, is in the interest of good planning. One of the primary concerns expressed by the planning board and the public during the initial review of the project was the 7.8-foot setback from the from the eastern property line where 50 feet is required by modern standards. Approval of construction of a new basement would create new building area in that same location. The applicant has not yet explained if the storage and mechanical space planned as part of this basement could be accommodated elsewhere within the approved or existing building footprint, and the planning department recommends that this should be considered. Other changes included in this modification include the existing basement of the western end of the building becoming a crawl space and a larger circulation area, both of which have been described here this evening. The larger circulation area would be within the existing building footprint. The planning department has no issue with those changes. Finally, or almost finally, the Zoning Board of Appeals. During the initial review, the application had received variances from the ZBA to authorize new construction in the setback areas. The ZBA determination included a summary of the application. The planning department has consulted the building inspector and the town attorney's office regarding the need for a modified approval. It is recommended that the applicant seek a modification of the prior ZBA approval due to the new building structure in the setback. In conclusion, the original approval for the site was based on inaccurate information which presented that the basement was existing where it is not. The applicant now proposes to construct a new basement, and the planning board should consider whether it is in the interest of good planning to allow the construction of new building area in the setback where 50 feet is required, allowing the new basement to exist approximately 7.8 feet from the property line. The planning department advises the applicant to submit revised additional plans and a response letter. The letter should include all the typical stuff, including callouts, bubbles, differentiation of colors that clarify any changes. And we note that only items deemed unnecessary by the planning board during the board's deliberations may be omitted. And with that, Mr. Chairman, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for that very clear report. The applicant wishes to be heard.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Whalen from Whalen Fowler PLLC on behalf of the applicant, which is Sylvan Realty. Before I start, I have with me Frankie Campione, who's the architect on the project, and I'd like Frankie to speak first because I want him to explain to you how the basement was discovered not to exist. So Frankie, if you would.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and apologies. I had no intention of seeing you again on this project once we had approvals. I have to be a little careful with my words because I know these are taped and people can see them later, including my client. Unfortunately, he's not a developer by trade. He's a property owner, and perhaps didn't understand the necessity of having us get into the building early and survey the existing conditions. If you recall, we're not the original architect on this project, and I don't think you were the original land use attorney either. We inherited this project from previous, and we were given a set of documents that were produced by others, where that area that you see on the left in gray and the right in red had been depicted as existing. We have those original drawings that were highlighted in yellow. They note that it's existing. And we never entered the building when we were going through planning with you, which was predominantly site plan approvals, and ARB, which was getting the aesthetics of the exterior approved and down to a certain height. So fast forward to when we get all those approvals at the end of last year, I think between October and December, and finally the owner says, okay, now I understand why you want to get in the building, so you're released to go do all your survey work. And we get there and we're stunned. There's first of all, there's a change in grade in the building. So if you've been in the building, which we hadn't been, because I didn't go there even as a restaurant, if you went in on the first floor, you may know that there's a step up to the left and steps down to the right, which I think is a dance floor. So that was unknown to us because none of our drawings that we ever presented to you indicated a change in grade on the first floor. And then we go down into the basement to explore what's happening in the basement with our structural engineer and our MEP engineer, and we hit a wall. literally hit a wall, which is between that mustard yellow and gray area. And we asked the operator of the restaurant, how do we get to the rest of the basement? And they said, that's it. And you can imagine our surprise. You can't make this up. I mean, you really can't make this up. And so I get back to the city, my structural engineers from Maryland, our MEP engineers in Melville, Long Island, and we start to scratch our heads and we say to the owner, now do you understand why it was important to let us get in there a year ago? And what do we do? And that's truly how we got here. I'll just be honest, we're not trying to pull a fast one. I come with heart on sleeve. We're a little bit surprised, or a lot surprised when we got there. The only ad, if you will, that came about as we did the construction documents is that area for the for pedestrian movement when you come down this staircase and the elevator, that little bit in blue that you can see. Unfortunately, we didn't do it as a separate color, but when we started to do the construction documents on how the switchback of the stair would work, we wind up on the south side of the building, which would not let us get into the basement from that location. So we had to create that corridor that would get you into the basement. So that just came about as we refined construction documents. Yes. So if you see the staircase, how it was depicted on the left originally schematically and an elevator. On the right, we have complete construction documents that we actually met with the building department and submitted, and then they got held up, obviously. What happens is you come down the elevator or those stairs, and in order to get to the area of red, we had to increase the circulation area slightly. I can start to address some of the comments that Jeremy made if you like, or you can, however you like.
Thank you. Richard Whalen again for the applicant. So that's the story. I remember I was not, well, I don't know how many of you were around at the beginning of the application, but I was not originally involved in the application. And obviously Frankie came on even after I did. So if you go back in your files, the original documentation, the original proposal showed a full basement under the entire building. And as Frankie explained, much of it is not there. So just to recapitulate here. So let's say on the left-hand side, the olive is existing basement, 2,120 square feet. That is there. I've been on the property now within the last month, been down in the basement. That does exist. The gray area below that, obviously that turns out not to exist. I guess it's slab on grade, as Jeremy said. And then the blue on the left-hand side, that was always proposed to be new area. That was a new part of the project so that we could get down into the basement. That contains that blue area on either version. And as Frankie explained, once they started to do the construction drawings, they realized they needed more room. That is fully under the proposed addition to the building. So it's under the footprint of the building. That will accommodate the stairs downstairs, the elevator shaft, and an elevator mechanical room. So there's not even any storage there. That's just passageway and mechanical space. So let me address the comments in the planning department memo. So first of all, we are doing a reconstruction. I have not spoken recently to the building inspector or to the town attorney's office, but I am confident in what I'm going to tell you. So we're doing a reconstruction. Definition of reconstruction is in the code. It's the removal and replacement in place and in kind of all or a substantial part of a pre-existing building and structure. So we're doing a removal and replacement in place and in kind, same kind of structure, of a substantial part of the pre-existing building and structure. The memo speaks, and Jeremy referred to, new building area within the setback. So let me be clear. There are no setback requirements for basements. Basements, as long as they are for storage, mechanical, or passageway purposes only, which is always what this has been designed to be, they don't count as gross floor area. So if you enlarge a basement, you don't enlarge gross floor area, you don't trigger parking requirements. The code, I'm not sure how the memo is referring to this, what they call building area, but the code has a definition of area of building, which I will presume is what the planning department is referring to when they talk about building area. The area of building or building area under the code is the area computed at the maximum horizontal cross-section of the main and accessory buildings on the lot, including the area of all roofed porches, terraces, and similar features. In short, The building area is the footprint of the building and any associated, we don't really have associated roofed terraces, but it's the building footprint. All of the basement that we're now proposing to excavate is within the building footprint, the existing building footprint. Obviously, the blue would be under the new addition, but everything we're building is within the footprint. So we are not adding building area within the setback, and more importantly, we're not adding gross floor area within the setback. The definition in the code, the enlargement of a non-conforming building or structure is regulated by section 255-1-42. That's the code section that talks about an increase in the degree of nonconformity. An increase in the degree of nonconformity occurs and only occurs when you put additional gross floor area, GFA, within a required setback. We're proposing to put a basement now under the existing building, which will be rebuilt above it. We're not adding GFA within the setback. The existing building is within the setback at its easterly end. The area in gray, or if you prefer the area in red, that's within, as Jeremy indicated, that's 7.8 feet from the eastern side or rear property line, eastern property line. On the north, that part of the building is 18 feet from the north property line. That setback is 15 feet. So as you go further west on the building where the olive is, which has nothing to do with the new basement, that encroaches within the side yard setback. But the only area of the building, and it's a decent end of it, is the eastern end of the building is within 50 feet. I don't know if any of you have been out there to the property recently. I actually took a trip out there today because one of the issues raised in the planning department memo was, might the basement under that part of the building have any adverse impact on the residential neighbor to the east? I ask that you go out there, pull in the parking lot, walk to the back corner over there. There is no way that the neighbor should mention this, the neighbor's properties, or there's a residence on the east side. It was rebuilt. It's a new house. It was rebuilt around 2020. It's set towards the 3 mile upper end of the property. So there's a very big backyard. And then adjoining us, there's a stockade fence, and then they have arborvitae and other vegetation on their side of the property. So they probably don't even really know too much about what's going on, except maybe when the nightclub is in operation. But if you go there, there's no way that they would prefer the status quo to what we're proposing. Go and see what's going on back in that corner, the structures and their, garbage bins and everything like that. There's no way they're better off with what we have right now. So I just want to say that. So we're not increasing the building footprint. We're not increasing the building area. We're not increasing GFA. We don't need a modification of the zoning board approval. I don't know why this is coming up. The zoning board resolution or the determination is summarized in the planning department memo. Jeremy said we got a setback to rebuild the building or to build new construction within the setbacks. We got 2 variances from the zoning board. We got a parking variance, which obviously has nothing to do with the basement because we're not adding GFA. And we got a setback variance for the apartments on the second floor. The commercial space is either existing or built to the south of the building and doesn't need any variances. So there's literally nothing for us to modify in the zoning board. If I went to the zoning board, what would I ask them to modify? The 2 variances they granted don't pertain to the basement. So I don't believe that we need anything from the zoning board. And finally, the legal standard of review, the memo talks about, the interest of good planning. The legal standard of review is basically the same as when you approve the project. It's meeting the site plan review standards. The fact is the board did approve a building with about 10,000 square feet of GFA, none of which is changing, and a 5,355 square foot basement. We now know the basement was not 5,355 square feet, but that was factored into your decision. Your approval was predicated upon a 5,355 square foot basement and the 10,000 square feet of JF above that. We're coming back to you with the knowledge that we now have and saying, we propose to build a basement 64% less than 2/3 the size of what you thought you were approving. So, I don't see it as it's obviously, unfortunate and embarrassing that we're back in front of you for this, but I don't see it as a major issue. We do not need a variance to put a basement under an existing building. One other thing I would say about that proposed, the cellar area, The mechanicals, first of all, the heating and cooling equipment for the units, both the retail and the office, will be in the units. Frankie has, confirmed that to me. So the units themselves are going to contain mechanicals for their heating and cooling. The mechanical equipment that will go in the basement will be the sprinkling, that for the sprinklering system, because the building will be sprinklered. There will be two, what are the Suffolk County Water Authority, the RPZ equipment. There are two of those. Those will be in the basement. And, the electrical and water service, boards and so forth, that will be down there. The rest of that basement would be storage. The memo asked for a covenant. It's not, we're going to not die on that hill, obviously. If you want a covenant, we'll give you a covenant, but it's really a waste. The covenant would say that we would comply with zoning. The basement is not in any way designed to ever be converted to floor area. First of all, if we were to add or wanted to put in anything that would count as GFA, like an office or some, part of workspace, that requires parking because you've now converted to GFA. We don't have any parking to give. We already got parking variances. If we were to go back for additional parking variances, I would expect they would be denied. The basement is not climate controlled. It's basically below grade. There are no window wells. There's no other egress. You cannot convert that space to any kind of use that would be other than storage or mechanicals. So if you want a covenant, obviously we would give that, but there's no danger of that basement or any part of that basement being converted in the future to GFA. It's not realistic.
Quick question. So
I just want to add one item with regard to why the green becomes not usable. That has to do with the steps that we discovered. And if you remember, if you were involved in some of the ARB discussions, keeping the building height at a certain height was mandatory by ARB to the extent that they did not even want parapets. Or we had a faux widow's walk at one point at the top there to screen any sort of mechanical equipment, and they asked that none of that mechanical equipment, other than vents through the roof, be up there. So there's no mechanical equipment on the roof. But which is why we brought them into the basement and within the units. But what happens now, in order to keep the building at the height that we had promised ARB, we asked ourselves, what's 0, 0? What's the finished floor elevation? Do we take the lowest floor and not go up any higher? Or do we argue that we're going to lift everything up 2.5, 3 feet as it may and match the height on the left? And the owner, as well as, meeting with Rick, had said, no, you've got to take the lowest point of what you were as grade and then work our way up to the height of the building. So in doing so, what our construction drawings show is that the green space will actually have the floor lowered to match the finished floor elevation of what's above red on the first floor. And that makes the basement of the green space a crawl space at that point. The height becomes non-usable. I just thought that I'd explain why it becomes void.
Just as a reminder too, Richard, the allowed roof height for a flat roof in the NIMBY zone is 30 feet. We're at 24 feet. This is minimum, as Frankie just explained. We're using the lowest floor in the building, which is that above the proposed new excavated basement, the gray or the red. And what happens is, as you cut across, you cut the top off the existing basement. So bear that in mind. This building design is only 24 feet high.
So just a question for you, Rick. So we're working with, so this whole proposal to keep that setback was all based on existing, right? And existing building,
Right.
And so we kept going back to that. And so you're saying by adding basement that we should treat that as existing?
So two things. You can, as of right, reconstruct an existing building that doesn't meet a setback with a building permit. As of right, the code says 255-1-42 says if you rebuild it, without increasing the amount of gross floor area within the setback, you can rebuild. You can even rebuild and add on the other side. What I'm saying is it doesn't change anything that you add a basement. I understand we're proposing now to put a basement under the rebuilt part of the building, but the basement doesn't count as floor area. It doesn't count as gross floor area, and so it doesn't add floor area within the setback.
But it's more building. It's not floor area, but it's more building.
But yes, but the code is more space, but the code does not view it that way. In other words, there's nothing that says you can't do that. In order for us to need a variance to put that additional space within the setback, it would have to constitute gross floor area. The basement there's no, what I said at the beginning, there's no setback requirement for basement.
So, I mean, I think, since this is my application, I think we talked at this, this afternoon about whether we needed the building department to weigh in, and now I'm feeling like we do. Just to clarify some of the points that Rick is making, just to make sure that we're seeing this the right way. Because, I mean, for me, I thought, okay, why can't they just pull that basement away from do you need that entire 2650 of basement? Or can it just be pulled back off the property line so that it's not so close to the property?
When we met with the building department, because we actually brought it to their attention, sorry. So when we met with the building department, brought the drawings actually physically to them and met with them, they actually, and told them what the issue was. They actually thought it would be just a quick administrative approval, didn't have any issues with it. And then it started to snowball. I mean, then it was, well, let us take a look at it, and then they reach out to you accordingly. But originally, building department did not have an issue with it.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, you've kind of turned my whole thinking around by saying that basements don't need to meet setbacks, and we obviously did approve it, but I don't know. I mean, I think we should get some kind of clarification ourselves from the building department that this all jives with the code, because my initial reaction was to just have you make that basement smaller and get it away from the property line. Or just redo the whole, because you haven't done any work on this building at this point. So, or find a way to, fit it in, fit the mechanicals in with what you got, with what it is already existing, which is in the green space. But I guess you said that that's all. All the elevations are off. Oh my God.
I was in there many years ago.
Yeah,
I know that when you walked in, it went down.
Down to the right, and you go, yeah.
But,
Yeah, so I think proceeding forward, I think we should get our own clarification from the building department.
I'm not clear about what we necessarily want to have them clarify.
Or whether the basement doesn't need to meet setbacks, because we were all basing.
Well, that's a legal, I don't know that the building department's is the place to give us that advice. Maybe council is in the place. We've had a representation from council for the applicant that the basement doesn't count. And
well, I know doesn't count towards GFA. I do know.
No, I agree. But I'll tell you what my problem with the whole thing is that this is an application to modify an approval that we gave. And it was an approval of a pre-existing, based on a pre-existing non-conforming use. And a key element of it being a pre-existing non-conforming use is that the 7.3 or whatever it is feet setback is allowable because it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. And everything we did in analyzing this application and approving the application was based on, and if I recall, there was some public comment on that 7-foot setback, negative public comment. And but it was all based on the idea that, well, it's pre-existing non-conforming, and therefore, they have I guess it's a right to do what they're doing, or they're proposing to do. And so we approved it on that basis. And, as we often say, when a pre-existing non-conforming application comes before us, we say, well, under the current zoning law, we would never allow it, or the building department or the town would never allow this. And but it's pre-existing non-conforming, and therefore it's we're stuck with it. But in my view, and you don't have to share this view, but in my view, if an application is going to be made on the basis that it's a pre-existing non-conforming use or pre-existing structure, thank you. It's got to fit. It's got to be right. It's got to say that the property is non-conforming for the following reasons, and It's got to be accurate. And I understand from what the presentation I heard today is that, and I'm not by any means pointing a finger at the current professionals. This is, listen, you get the case that you get, things get dumped on you and you look at it and go, what did this guy do? And the answer is that it sounds like whether it was the prior architect or the prior application, was an attorney or a consultant or whatever it was, didn't do their job, didn't go in and look and see that this pre-existing non-conforming use was what we, as a board, were told it was. We were told as a pre-existing non-conforming use, when in fact what it is was a non-existing non-conforming use. You had a basement that didn't exist, and we approved it. And I think that taints, and I'm not implying that anybody did anything wrong or deliberately lied to the board or anything like that at all. Maybe it was just, somebody didn't, dot every I and cross every T. But when you're dealing, in my opinion, when you're dealing with a pre-existing non-conforming use and you're trying to get that application past this board or any other board, and the ZBA is one of the boards that this went before, and that's why I actually agree that it needs to go back before the ZBA. It's got to be right, and it wasn't right. It wasn't right when it was presented to us. We analyzed it on the basis of something that wasn't right, and we came up with this result. I don't see that this application, as it exists, should be modified. In my view, and again, I'm not, no one has to agree with me, but in my view, you go right back to the starting gate and do it again. Because if you're going to say it's pre-existing non-conforming use, and you're going to rely on that to get that 7-foot setback, which, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the driving forces behind the idea of you relying on pre-existing non-conforming, then it's got to be right. And that's my take on it. So I open up the floor. Anybody else?
Yeah, when I first looked at this, I said, well, we approved it with thinking that there was a basement there, but there really wasn't. But we approved it as though there was. Now they're going to put the basement that we thought was there anyway, so nothing really changes in a certain respect. So I said, it should be, no big deal to approve it. But then the more I looked into it, the more I thought about it, one of the major items that was discussed not only by the planning board, but more so by the ZBA, was whether or not this qualified or met the definition of a reconstruction, according to the code. And as a matter of fact, it was such an important issue that we asked the building inspector to determine whether or not he felt this met the definition of a reconstruction. And he came back and said it did. And I remember we were still doubtful, or not doubtful, but we still had questions because and I think might have been brought up at ZBA, or maybe it was brought up at our meetings. But the question was, is the foundation strong enough? Is it sturdy enough to support a reconstruction, a renovation, which means you have to keep certain amounts of the building, that sort of thing. And that was one of the reasons we went to the building inspector. And the answer came back that it was. And what was provided by Rick at the time was the Maresca letter, which was a letter by an engineer which stated that the foundation was sturdy enough to withstand a reconstruction. Okay. The foundation is not what the building inspector thought it was when he made his determination. What the engineer Maresca said was the foundation was sturdy enough, what she said, that, the foundation was not what she thought. So in my view, not only do we need to start from ground zero again, with the proper plans and the engineering and so forth, because we need to answer that question again, knowing that there is no basement there. And we need to have the building inspector survey the property properly with the right information. And I think the ZBA needs to look at it again, because I remember watching the ZBA meeting, and they were sort of handcuffed in making a decision, and they said so, that they didn't have all the plans that they usually have. They didn't have all the information that they usually have when they're asked to make a decision on these variances. And I remember the attorney, I think it was Mr. Thiel's wife, I forgot her name. Nancy Lynn. She said that if anything changes with regard to these plans that we have, which we realize are not complete, then it must come back to the ZBA. Well, there's been a major change here with regard to the basement, so it needs to go back to the ZBA. And it needs to go back to the planning board, because now we need to get another decision by the building inspector. So that's my...
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I agree with getting decision from the building inspector. I mean, first of all, so if they approved, if they looked at that foundation, what did they look at?
Yeah.
Just look at
That's
the
the
slab.
question, right?
question.
What did they- Where were they looking at?
Foundation
They
was.
didn't, apparently, from what.
So, I mean, what's the engineer looking at? What's the building department looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
And I guess, I mean, the whole question I have is, at this point, how is this a reconstruction?
Right.
This is a construction.
decision.
That's a question we need to answer if it
Right.
comes
Yeah,
back.
exactly. That's the
Right
question
now,
I
we
have
just
that I
need
think
to
we need
determine
clarified.
whether or not it should come back to us.
Well, my question too is about reconstruction, and how are they going to dig out the
Yeah.
basements? You get a bobcat in there and chisel and do that, but do you risk knocking down the walls? And
Are they gonna
then you gotta
raise it?
pour like a
You would know the answer to that.
basement, basement foundation, basement walls to support
But
the
Michael, that's a question we don't need to answer tonight.
No.
All we need to answer.
Why, I'm in the
Is it
minority
impossible, I
on
guess,
this,
is the
on this
question.
board, because
Well, they can lift buildings.
As a matter
I
of
don't
fact,
think we need to
they're not
go
keeping
back,
that.
I don't think we need to go back to square one.
You're not, actually, you're not in the minority, because
The whole point is they're
I'm the
keeping
only one
it.
who said that so far.
The only way they can keep that
I-
setback is if they keep the building.
Yeah. And I have a quick question about the depth of the current basement. You mentioned that because of the grade difference, you'd have to shave a couple. How deep is it currently?
Sorry, presented in section 40.
You may have, I'm sorry.
No, this is fine.
There's a stair, there's like a weird stair. My memory is hazy, Bruce.
Yeah, you and me.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to
So
remember.
what happens when you go to the property and you're in the parking lot, which has its slopes as well?
Yeah.
You go up a few steps.
Yes.
To actually enter the
Enter the-
doors.
right.
Yes.
So you're in the higher side.
And then to
And
go
then
to
it
the
drops
dance
down
floor or
to the
whatever. it
dance
goes-
floor.
Right.
So we're treating the dance floor as grade.
Right.
0, especially since it's supposedly on slab. Now, wouldn't we all laugh if we start to dig
And
and
there's a
see that this
basement
basement that's
there.
been closed in? So that's.
Well, yeah, that actually.
That would be, that would be hysterical.
No, well, that would be, because they would have the basement that you were talking about, and it just so happens that you've got a concrete or
It would just be
whatever
like-
it is.
It's just locked in.
A locked in or an abandoned space, that we just don't know.
I hate to go into a cul-de-sac here, but is there a possibility that Bruce and I are talking about is that there is in fact a basement?
Not that we're aware of. We have not done any borings or coring to see if there's a hidden
Knock on
basement.
wood.
I won't say where, but there's a building in Southampton that does exist because we have the original drawings and we're in the property and they're like, there's no basement. We're like, yes, there is. There it is on the drawings. The utility space, what happens is it will go down to about 5'6" when we're done. And then,
So it's like almost 8 feet at this point.
right,
7'6"
and it'll
or
go
7.5
down, it'll go down to at least, if not lower, because
Okay.
even in that basement area, there's different steps.
That's
If
kind
you
of
go down there.
where I'm like,
Since I've been in the basement,
Oh, I'm sorry,
basement,
5'6"
multiple levels.
5'6" floor to floor when we're done.
Okay, so that
the
doesn't include the stuff between, right?
Right.
All right, so, because my reason for asking was, if there's a way to use the current basement to put the mechanicals in, then that would save us from going, but I feel like it's such a big mistake. And, it's obviously not your fault or your
It's
fault.
good, we're good.
Yeah, it's such a big thing. I do think we need clarification from the building department. It has to go back to the ZBA. It's a lot.
This evening has been a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But I thought about that, and the only thing about that is they're not the same kind of mistake. And again, because in my view, the mistake goes to the heart of this application, which is
the reconstruction.
It's the pre-existing non-conforming nature of it.
Okay.
What do you call it? The housing, parcel on 3 Mile Harbor. It was a math error. It was a mistake as to how they drew things, but they weren't relying on an existing set of facts, and we weren't relying on an existing set of facts.
And I do think that if we had considered digging out a basement at that point, we would have done a lot more research and a lot more talking to the building department, a lot more.
It would have been a very different application.
We would have been considering that tremendously. So,
this.
the only reason why, Rick is saying that it doesn't need this, it doesn't need this, it doesn't need, so I think we should just do our homework and make sure that all of that is true. And because you're right, for me, it's a huge mistake, and can they dig it out? So Bruce is saying, I guess they lift the building, is that what they do?
You'd have to lift the building and then.
Those are building department issues.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I agree, you need to go back to the building department.
Find out if it's a reconstruction, find out if.
When there is no basement that you thought was a basement, because to Lou's point,
It's not.
where's the foundation? If there was a concrete slab upon which they're building. But in terms of the legal issues, and there were some legal issues that were raised, I think that we need to go to the town attorney and get advice from them as to whether or not, leaving aside the issue of whether or not you can actually do what they're proposing and whether that constitutes a reconstruction or not. I think the underlying legal question of whether it's whether the essentially movement of the basement from one place to the other allows it to continue to be a pre-existing non-conforming use. I certainly respect council's statement, but it's council's statement. We need to verify that as well as everything else.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go right.
So when this all came to light, and of course the owner's scratching his head, we have an owner's rep / construction manager that unfortunately didn't go do their homework at the time either. One of the questions I raised was, well, let's not dig the basement. Let's just not do it. And the problem seems to be leasing, right? They feel there's a value to having some storage for their tenants above. And so they don't
want to put the mechanicals in the roof.
In the everything, from mechanicals to the potential of storage and so forth, or whatever you need for the site, maintain the property, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not leasable. It's not leasable, but it's more where you keep salt for the whatever you need to maintain the property in general. So I don't know if this is a proper question to ask. Stop me if it's wrong. But if while you do your homework and compared to what Rick has presented, are there avenues of least resistance? Since the owner would like a basement, is it a matter of pulling the basement back to meet the setback lines where you'd have a partial basement in the red and then leave the rest of it on slab? Or could we leave it all on slab and do the basement to the south where we're increasing the footprint as of right anyway? Because he feels the need to have some space in the lower level.
Those are all questions, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I said, I don't know if this is.
I think that gets ahead of where we need to be with this.
And I think I'm pretty firm in what I said before. This changes everything. Because before we thought there was a basement there, we thought there was a certain type of foundation. And now I find out that the people that we relied on, the plans that we relied on, that nailed down that definition of what a reconstruction is, and this confirms it, didn't really, it was wrong. It was based on wrong information.
So let me clarify something here. So during the zoning board application, we submitted a letter from Stephen Reska, an engineer in Hampton Bays. The information he provided, as far as I know today, is accurate. What he said is that there's a concrete masonry unit foundation and that it's capable of supporting a two-story building. That's all he said. He didn't address the issue of whether there was a basement.
But Rick, I mean, an important question like that, where an engineer tells me that, he gives me a certain assessment about something based on inaccurate information about central to the foundation itself, which is the whole crux of the matter here.
If he didn't say anything, I would have liked him to say, I was there, by the way, and there's no basement.
Well, did he go to the plate? Did he go to the site?
Oh, he wrote a letter saying that he went, he looked to see what was there, a CMU.
Physically made a site visit? I mean, I would like to think that that's what happened.
Two things. First of all, the letter is only intelligible if he went there. Secondly, I do recall them having to wait to him to visit the site for him to write the letter. So I'm sure he visited the property.
Yeah, okay, so when...
I'm sorry, but to me, I question that assessment. I throw it out the window because it's based on faulty information.
I mean, in his letter, does he say there's a basement?
No, he doesn't address the issue at all.
Which, unfortunately, the question the engineer was actually asked to address was, could the basement that exists be reused for the reconstruction?
No, Jeremy, that's not what he was asked. No, wait.
Rick, please don't speak over me. Rick, please don't speak over me. The question that the engineer was asked was, could he certify that the basement that is there could be reused in reconstruction? We got a letter back that, while maybe accurate to the conditions on the ground, was not in response to the question that was posed.
The engineer was assuming that this board knew that the basement was only under the one portion of the...
Wait a minute, hang on.
Let Bruce go.
I have the letter.
Wasn't that letter written with the previous architect's design?
Yes, it was. I believe. Sorry?
Does he use the word foundation or does he use?
I'll read the letter, it's very short. Jeremy is not correct. I was there. They asked whether the foundation could support the proposed two-story building. They didn't ask anything about the basement. The letter was, dear board members, I have completed an inspection of the foundation for the building as referenced. The purpose of the inspection was to assess the condition of the foundation and determine if the foundation will be able to handle a two-level structure. My findings are as follows. The foundation consists of 8-inch concrete masonry units with a poured concrete footing. The foundation is considered to be in good condition. There were no signs of any settlement, cracking, nor lateral movement. I can state that the foundation will be able to handle the loading of a two-story structure without any structural modifications, period.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. My question is, he inspected the footings, which means, how did he inspect the footings? You have...
Could have gone, I guess it could have gone inside to the existing basement, maybe?
Well, there is no basement, so how did
Well, there's a basement at the western end.
If there's no basement on the east side, how did he inspect concrete footings?
I don't know.
That's the problem.
It sounds to me like we are dealing with a paucity of information. And we need to really, pardon the expression, get a good foundation before we come to any decision on this. Because there's so many issues that this raises. It's not like, for instance, I'm sure you recall, that previously in this application, you realized that there was an issue with the pyramid, and you came to us and you said there's an issue, and we dealt with it pretty quickly because it was obvious and it was not easily, but we could deal with it in a straightforward manner and it was resolved. Just ain't that.
There's too much more involved in this. And not to, well, I will repeat myself. To me, it goes to the whole heart of the whole application, the mistake as to the basement, if you will.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you what the next step is. I'd like to point out to you that if you were not to modify the application, then this building would have no basement whatsoever. Now, I rent in a building in Amagansett. We have a law office, obviously. We have a basement. Basement space is invaluable, not even if you're a retail store. Even if you're a law office, you can archive your files down there, store extra supplies. Basement is very valuable. If we were to go forward and you were to not modify the approval at all, this building would have 0 basements, not for mechanical, not for storage. Are you suggesting that that's what you want?
No, what I'm suggesting is I want an application that's based on what the conditions are, because your building in Amagansett isn't a pre-existing non-conforming. That was new construction, if I recall. This is, and again, that's why I keep coming back to it. It's pre-existing non-conforming. And if you're doing something with a pre-existing non-conforming use, you're doing structure. I keep saying use. That's my error. If you're going to be relying on a pre-existing non-conforming structure and you want to continue to use it in the way in which it's been used before, it has to be presented to us accurately in the first place so that our analysis can reflect this board's mandate, basically, which is, among other things, to uphold the town code and the planning. The town code is, the things that are pre-existing non-conforming are, if you will, in derogation of the town code. It's inconsistent with the town code inherently. So we need to have accurate information from the get-go.
So what do you want from us?
Well, I think you need to reassess the reconstruction issue and whether you can put even a half basement or a 3/4 basement, whatever down there, and with everything you've got there, right? Not without tearing down the building, without.
That's what I think too, like there should be a reinspection with the knowledge that there's no basements.
Yeah.
And the inspector should be informed that they want to put a basement here. Does the foundation support everything?
That's your point, right?
Yes. No, I mean, I think that's what your next steps is making sure.
I think we we have to go to the building inspector, maybe involve the town attorney's office. See, we have an agreement. Just so you know.
And an engineer, and another engineer, and get another engineer's report.
Yeah, well, but my position is that the code is actually clear. If you have a non-conforming building, you can reconstruct that.
Yeah, I get
Basement, foundation,
I get that.
Right.
It's the idea of what does the application contain?
And what can you reconstruct?
That's what I'm
Can reconstruct it
The basement that's not there.
safely with now the new addition of digging out a basement?
Okay, so I'll have to follow up. I assume that's what your letter will say. I'll follow up with the building department, the town attorney's office. We'll see if we can reach some sort of.
Let me run through the questions so that we have a framework for the planning department to prepare the letter, but also include in the letter the issues that we've just raised as far as going to the building department, because I don't think that's in the questions here. Go as far as going to town attorney, that's also not in here. And we'll work up, as you know, a letter that'll give you guidance and give us direction going forward. All right, first one's going to be no editorial. Does the planning board agree that this proposed modification does not modify the original secret determination? We all, it's still point 2. Okay. Should the applicant submit a site plan that accurately shows the setback for the proposed new basement? I think that's superfluous. That's a kind of a moot question right now. Okay. Does the planning board find a covenant allowing use of the basement for only mechanical and storage spaces warranted? Should approval be considered? And again, I think we can kind of kick that one down the road. Does the planning board find that the proposed new basement is acceptable? It's a big no, no all around. Michael, is it a no for you?
No, it's not a no.
So it's a yes?
It's a yes,
Okay, all right, well, but let me just make sure. No?
Well, I mean, it's, again,
Based on
based
other
based on new
inspections.
engineering reports, based on
Yes.
whether it's a reconstruction, whether it can handle this
There
new
are other
basement.
questions that need
Yeah,
to
it's
be
just,
Okay,
you know,
so this is also, kick it down the road.
yeah, it's kind of based on many
Kick it.
things.
All right, we'll do another one. Does the planning board agree to a modified ZBA review is warranted?
Yes.
It seems to be.
That's a problem, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Look,
Nothing was
it could
answered.
turn out, no, nothing was answered. So Jeremy, you're on your own as far as the writing order.
Until Tuesday.
Going out on top, what can I say?
You're going out with a bang. So, all right, listen.
Apologies all around.
I'm so, yeah, I guess I said this before, you know, sometimes you get a case and you say, wow, this is gonna be great. And then you start looking at the file and you wanna clobber somebody, so.
All right, looks like we'll be back.
Well, yeah, well.
Yeah.
I would do it boring, make sure it's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have an indoor pool.
Yeah. There's someone living down there.
But I,
Sorry?
there is a crawl space, when I was down there, I was shown it, that runs east from the existing basement, but I was told it isn't contiguous.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
I wasn't about to crawl in.
Well, send someone in.
Come on.
By
Send
the way,
someone
how
in.
did that come about that people thought there was a basement there? The owner thought there was a basement there, the previous architect thought there
Previous architect is.
Previous architect indicated on their documents that was submitted to you and ARB that there's an existing basement
Did you
there.
ask them how they
No, we've
thought?
had no contact.
wonder
with
about the
existing-
survey.
Those documents were given to us to start our drawings, to take it when the handoff happened via the owner's rep.
The architect probably wouldn't talk to us because remember, she tried to withdraw the application. The application was made in her name. And so when Frankie was retained, she tried to withdraw the site plan application on the grounds that she was the applicant.
Well, here you are. So,
Yikes.
thank you very much. And,
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Whalen said, we'll see you again.
I would wait, watch.
You got another,
I'd like to recommend that the board read The Cask of Amontillado if you haven't already. There's a good Edgar Allan Poe story that might shed a little light here.
That's what's down there.
All right, let's do the old file map modifications first, and then we'll do the.
Sam, Tiffany wants to call in on the 840 Springs fireplace once.
Oh, does she?
She wants to come in.
Yeah, sure. Is Tiffany, is she there?
I am here, but just to listen and in case anyone has any questions.
Very well. Okay, well, we're gonna do Kusher first. And Mr. Crouch, that's yours, correct? Okay, all right, so first, we'll do the Joe Ryan and James Kusher old file map modification first, and then we'll do 840 Springs Fireplace. So go right ahead. Who's got it, Dan or Chris?
Or nobody?
It's the same as.
What?
This is the same scenario we had earlier.
Yeah, we were.
You don't have, well, we have the Raynor Group's, report.
I saw something.
There was something here by Ryan.
By Ryan, yeah.
That's 3 edges on.
Yeah, it's the same one though.
Is it the same?
Here it is. Oh, at the Rainer Group.
It's the same one.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, edge.
It's on the second page.
Well, I'm sorry?
I said, we can pull up the PDFs on here and read it if that would be. The planning departments.
Well, I can read it. All right, I'll read it. So this is to us from Ryan Schlittling. Sorry, Ryan. That's a new. An application has been submitted requesting modification of the above referenced UR map in order to reduce the width of the scenic easement. After reviewing the history of the site, it was found that the parcel was developed in 1989 and received a certificate of occupancy in 1990 without completing the scenic easement requirements of the UR map. The proposed modification is to reduce the required 25-foot scenic easement along Middle Highway to a width of 11 feet. The current owner has noted that the existing development includes clearing activity and improvements, including landscaping features that encroach within the 25-foot scenic easement. Planning board agrees with Vincent Gaudiello, PE, that a reduction of the scenic easement would be appropriate and more conforming to the site conditions. The proposed modification is a minor change to the map and should not impact the neighborhood. A 25-foot scenic easement would not protect any significant vegetation, and reducing the size will not negatively impact the environment. Reducing the easement to 11 feet would still provide some road frontage protection while alleviating the hardship of the property receiving the C of O for the work that has already taken place. The planning department has no objection to this modification, and there is attached to that is a memo from Vincent. I should also add, I believe we got a letter from a member of the public objecting to the approval, the proposal, I should say, and I presume you've had a chance to look at that as well. Does the applicant wish to be heard?
So I'm Thomas Crouch, attorney for the applicant. So I'll go through the timeline quickly and then I'll get to Mr. Buda's letter. He sent it to me this morning, so I appreciate that he did that. So basically this, in I believe the 70s, the UR map required a 50-foot wide scenic easement along that strip on Middle Highway, Hedges Avenue. And given that the property itself is only 80 feet deep, didn't really make a lot of sense, but the house was built in 1990 and received a CO. At that point, there was no easement filed. And then in 1996, the town board at the time reduced the scenic easement to 25 feet, probably in recognition of the fact that the 50-foot easement on an 80-foot deep property doesn't make any sense. Again, there was no easement filed after that town board resolution. The owner at the time got a CO for a pool in 2007, never came up. And then the current owner, my client, bought the property in 2015 and they got an updated CO and they got a title report and there was no scenic easement. We've asked the building department to produce any record of the scenic easement. They've not been able to. In 2020, my client opened a building permit for interior work, and this issue came up when she tried to close out the building permit. So basically, if you look at the current site condition, the 11 feet protects pretty much what the current vegetation is. We presented to the town board a few months ago to see if they were inclined to agree with us. They were. Obviously, because it's on a UR map, we have to go through the modification process. So, I just want to make clear, there is no scenic easement existing. She could, assuming she meets the other clearing restriction, the generalized clearing restriction on the property, she could cut down any tree. She could cut down any, vegetation that's there now. The property is not encumbered in any way. So, just acknowledging that, Mr. Buda submitted a letter this morning. I've, three things he brought up that I disagree with. He quotes my letter that, we did consider a 25-foot easement that, made exception for the driveway and the retaining wall that's there now. But he didn't continue on reading my letter. And what's said after that is that, I urge the town board to accept an 11-foot easement for the reasons I've discussed, fairness, but also Mark Abramson, the Assistant Director of Natural Resources, I believe that's the right title, sent us an email stating, I believe that requiring the other area in the undocumented easement, in other words, that area that's now lawn, that's between the 11-foot proposed and the 25-foot requirement that's existing, to be revegetated would not improve the habitat significantly, and it would make more sense to reduce the scenic easement rather than add exceptions. So, there's not really much to be gained from requiring her to revegetate any additional area. What's there now is 11-foot buffer to the street. Also, I think in Mr. Buda's letter, it's not clear that my client was not the owner of the property in 1996 when the town board, made this requirement for a 25-foot easement. She bought the property in 2015. She got an updated CO, which is a hot issue in the town right now, and she got a title report. She did not, at any point, was alerted to the fact that there was this requirement. So she opened a permit in 2020 for interior work. So she's done everything she's supposed to do here. And I just want to make sure that's very clear. And then, Mr. Buda brings up the idea of precedent. I'm not aware of this kind of situation coming up very often. Usually a scenic easement, it's required to be filed as part of like a subdivision. There's some hook for the town to, you don't have a lot of scenic easements where, you got an existing property with no open permits or any, so I don't know that this is going to repeat itself, and also I think, I think just given the fact pattern here, you can limit the precedential value pretty significantly. Someone that that the property got multiple COs over 26 years and no one raised this issue. The fact that the Natural Resources Department does not have a problem with this. Mr. Abramson is usually quite protective of scenic easements, and so I think his opinion matters. So anyway, that's kind of how we got here, if you have any questions. Yeah.
So you're saying that easement was approved by the town?
Yeah, the town board resolution. Yeah.
Okay. But that resolution doesn't have any impact on any prospective purchaser being obligated to that scenic easement unless the scenic easement is somehow filed of record with the county clerk?
Well, it's recorded against the property. Yeah. An easement's recorded against the property. Right. I don't think, like, I do real estate closings, I think it's pretty onerous to go researching, town board resolutions.
I get that. Yeah. I get that. So the idea is, in an ordinary title search, merely having the town pass a resolution saying that there's a 25-foot scenic easement, that's not going to come up when somebody goes. So what I'm wondering is there this giant gap somewhere in the way the town operates where the town board passes scenic easements and they're meaningless as a practical matter, because anytime somebody buys a property that's subject to that kind of 25-foot or whatever scenic easement, there's no restriction on the purchaser, no notice to the purchaser unless somehow it got recorded. And you're telling me that but it sounds to me like it never gets recorded.
No, so there's different scenarios. So the typical scenario in which a scenic easement is approved by the town board, it's for individual property. What happens is there's a town board resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign the easement. Mm-hmm. Then there's usually, typically a CO or, the ability to get a building permit. There's some hook in which they have to record it. Here, this 1996 resolution wasn't for this specific property. It was for the UR map in general to make a 25-foot requirement. It just was never followed through on.
Because there was never any reason.
Yeah, there's no CO at stake, there was no building permit. And, so yeah, it basically, for it to be of record in terms of a real estate transaction, it has to get recorded with the county clerk. Right. And then in the title search, it'll come up and you'll see it. So here, yeah, that's the ones that I've done, the ones where, you do the resolution and the supervisor signs it and they sign the TP 584 and Mechanic and you go record it. Those get recorded. Right. This particular situation is just, I don't think that, the house was already existing in 1996. There were no open permits at the time. There were other properties that, were subject to this 96 resolution. So I just don't think,
It came up in 2020.
It came up in 2022 when she tried to close out her building permit.
Somehow it was out there somewhere.
Well, let me ask this. What about the neighbors? I mean, does it
continue down the road?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure. Is it going to be like a gap or something?
Let me see,
So this sets the precedent for everybody else.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, everybody else is gonna come in front of us.
And there goes the value of that 25-foot scenic easement.
Middle highway.
Show me on the map where the 25
let's
foot
see that.
easement should be.
along the road here, I believe.
So, yeah.
Town board.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
That
No
one.
one
You see
ever
my
had seen the easement submitted for that.
Yes, I see the red line. I think the red line. So the red line.
That's the scenic easement.
And that red line continues down.
Required, should have been.
Yes.
Can you get to the house? Is that this house? What we're looking at?
Yes.
Yes.
That seems more than, but from the road to the house, that's more than 11 feet.
I think there's
So there might be the road.
the
right of way, and then the easement.
That's what they measure it.
Yeah.
That's protected from the road.
It still looks rather
Yeah,
vegetated.
yeah.
Yeah, so the town board 96, they changed the UR map to require they didn't accept an easement from.
Okay.
Yeah, they just changed the UR map itself.
So that's
So
why,
anything
that's
on
why
that
it
UR
doesn't
map,
come up on a title search.
Right.
All right, that makes sense. All right, and what are we doing here? Making a recommendation to the town board? Is that,
It's comments.
Comments?
Yeah.
anybody?
I accept.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Natural Resource Department has.
I think that, just referring back to Mr. Buda's letter, I think his problem was precedent. And in this case, I agree with Thomas that the circumstances of this particular situation is not really a common occurrence.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're, it's really setting any kind of precedent.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I agree that precedent is the kind of thing that you worry about when you're approving something like this, so. All right, and I also like Bruce's idea of relying on or citing to the natural resources department's comments. So, does that give you guys enough to scribble something together?
Wait, Thomas, would your client agree to Buda's suggestion that you have only the area that's already violated the scenic easement to be designated as the only place where the scenic easement would be infringed upon?
The 11 feet.
Yeah, it's just I don't think, we want just the 11 feet that's basically the existing vegetation on the property. If you go to 25 feet, basically you have a driveway, you have a retaining wall and then lawn. And Mark's opinion was revegetating the lawn doesn't really have a lot of value, and my client doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, do you guys have enough to write that's a yes? Yes. All right, very good, okay. Ms. Scarlato, are you there? Tiffany?
I am.
Okay. You want to relieve me of the burden of reading, Chris?
Yeah, we got it. So.
We got it now.
All right, Chris is going to read the memo from Ryan. Go ahead.
Okay. Chris Becker, planner, again. In the matter of 840 Springs Fireplace Road, LLC UR modification, an application has been submitted requesting modification of the above referenced UR map in order to reduce the width of this required scenic easement for urban renewal parcel 32 on map 455, as well as changing the driveway location. The proposed modification is to reduce the 50-foot wide scenic easement along Springs Fireplace Road and the driveway location to a 25-foot wide scenic easement at the rear of the parcel and common driveway location at the southerly property line along Springs Fireplace Road, shared with urban renewal parcel 31 to the south. The planning department agrees with Vincent Gaudiello, practicing engineer, consultant for the town, that a reduction of the scenic easement would allow for the possibility of a greater setback from the proposed development to the existing wetlands. This modification is a minor change to the map and does not impact the neighborhood. The easement at the front of the property does not protect any significant vegetation, and allowing for allowing the improvements to be shifted further west can provide environmental improvements to Accabonac Harbor. The wastewater treatment for the parcel is proposed to be within the scenic easement area along Springs Fireplace Road, and the planning department has no objections to the proposed modification. And I'll just show some aerials of the map of the parcel here, which is circled. 840, sorry, apologies. Not 840 then? It's the same 836. There we go. We're just adjacent.
Where are you bringing that up?
We're not seeing it.
I'm looking at us.
Oh, it's past the Pollock House.
There we go.
So here's the property, Springs Fireplace would be to the west of it.
And again, we have a letter from Mr. Buddha objecting to the Ms. Scarlato, would you like to be heard?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much for the opportunity this evening. So this is an application to reduce the front yard scenic easement requirement in the urban renewal map. I know the board is concerned with precedent. This is the last lot in the urban renewal map, and the lot further to the west was developed, and you see it in this aerial photograph. Unfortunately, it's under construction at that point, but the lot to the west of that was developed prior to UR, and the lot to the east of that has no UR requirement in it. So a reduction from this scenic easement from 50 to 25 is really not, it wouldn't really affect any continuity with respect to precedent and the urban renewal map. Again, as outlined by the planning department and the engineering department, it would create a situation in which we can give a greater scenic easement and greater buffer to the wetlands from that location. And the vegetation in the front yard is not really significant as far as the planning department, the engineering department, and obviously we were concerned as far as giving a benefit to the overall property. It's obviously across the street from a number of commercial structures, so necessarily putting the house further forward doesn't benefit my client with respect to privacy because it is a very commercial area, but it does give a greater setback for wetlands. And I know there is a great vista to be had between the Pollock Krasner house and down that whole side view of Accabonac Harbor, and we want to be able to preserve that.
Can we get that pop-up window off of the picture? Is that possible? Thank you.
So Debbie, is that across the street from the auto collision place?
It's across the street from the pizza place and liquor store on 3 Mile Harbor.
Auto collision, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Fort Pond is just perpendicular to that, so the auto collision is up the road a little bit on Fort Pond, but it's at that intersection, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Did you have a chance to look at Mr. Buddha's letter?
I did not receive it.
Right. Where is that paper street that Mr. Buddha referenced in the letter?
Wait, can you repeat the question?
Yeah,
Where was the paper street?
Hey, I'll read from his letter. It should be noted that to the rear, the east of the subject property is a 20-foot wide portion of an existing adjacent quote-unquote paper street that has been authorized to be abandoned and merged into the subject property.
So that would be this area here, which I'm running the mouse over, I believe.
Right, that's a different property owner. That's 836 that you're looking at, right?
Yes, your property is here though.
840.
Seems to abut the rear of subject property.
Got it. Okay. Again, that's going to be part of it, what will eventually become a scenic easement in favor of the town with respect to any development on the parcel.
And you don't see any negative precedent being set on this?
No, as I said, the lot, this is the last lot in the urban renewal map. And the lot that is further to the west was owned by attorney Andy Hammer at one time and had been developed prior to zoning, so it is a pre-existing non-conforming residence on that site, and so wasn't applicable to that site. So you have that's basically at 836 is where your urban renewal map ends.
So you're saying as a practical matter, there's no danger of a precedent?
Because you're separated.
Nothing to follow it.
Right, there's nothing to follow it, and there's nothing connecting to this particular scenic easement. We're willing to keep the 25-foot scenic easement in place.
All right.
As I said, we're also, combining the driveway, so we're making one common driveway for both that'll service 836 and 840 with a common driveway easement that we'll do privately, but that will resolve another curb cut on Springs Fireplace Road as well for this driveway.
Did Natural Resources weigh in on this, or do we just have the professional engineers report?
I think we have engineers and the planning department.
Planning department, but not Natural Resources. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else we want to roll on.
It's a vacant lot right now, so it was in before the planning department for an NRSP.
Okay, I got it. All right, anybody? Any objection?
No, I mean, I think it's doing what we want is to protect the wetlands, right? So I think bringing it.
That's a good hook. Yeah. Okay. Wetlands, write that down. Okay. Anybody have any other comments we want to pass on to the town board?
No.
On this? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Scalata, you have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, then we now come to the near denouement of our meeting. We've got two resolutions, and Luke, they're all yours, so. Let you pick. You want Fisher first or Inlet first?
I got Inlet first.
All right, Inlet, go ahead.
I got the urban renewal.
Pardon me?
The, division or subdivision?
It was.
James Schoenster. Sorry?
It was removed from the agenda.
Oh, God, have you been sitting here the whole time waiting on that? Yeah. I'm so sorry. At the very beginning of the meeting, I announced that that one is, that's the Heritage Farm one?
No.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
The urban renewal. Subdivide 1 acre into 2 half-acre lots.
That one, yes, that one also was removed, and I may not have said anything at the beginning, in which case I apologize. I hope I didn't.
Okay, we can still look at it though, right?
It's going to be coming back. Do we have?
Soon coming back?
Well, is it what was the reason for the?
You drove down from the Catskills.
I'm sorry?
You drove down from the Catskills.
Yeah, I did.
I thought it was the lawyer who pulled that. No? Do you have somebody else looking at it?
What was the reason for?
What was the reason for?
planning department procedure.
So there was a request?
So did you have an attorney working on it?
Yes, I did. I had Barney Lester.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right.
Brian Lester pulled it.
My apologies. Let me roll back. We got a letter, that's right, we got a letter 2 days ago from, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, from Lester and Tarbert, requesting that the application be withdrawn. And we told them that we granted that request. So was it your attorney?
Tell you?
Assuming you're represented by Tarbert and Lester on this? Yeah, they requested the adjournment and was granted. So
they got a hold of me and left me an email saying that it was gonna go down and we'll get back to you with the results. And I'm like, let me get down there and just maybe I can mitigate any kind of concerns you might have or something like that. It is just dividing a 1 acre into a 2 half-acre lots. We can meet all the setback stuff and.
I'm sorry, no, that one was withdrawn. It wasn't, we did a withdrawal tonight on a different matter. That's what I thought you were talking about. But.
All right, so it gets put back on the account.
You'll have to talk to your counsel about that. Right now, it was withdrawn, I believe. It was withdrawn or they requested an adjournment, or how did they phrase it?
Makes no sense to me. My last email was it's gonna be considered. And I just felt it'd be best for me to be here to make sure that there's any questions.
I'm so sorry.
I should drove down from up there and this is quite right. Okay. Thank you very much for your consideration.
No, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. Okay.
That's terrible.
Yeah, no, but we did get a letter. I got a letter yesterday morning, it came in. And that was when I sent Jody an email on saying, yeah.
Another mistake tonight.
Man, that's 3 though, so
But
that's
not
it.
on.
Well, there was really 4 because that Heritage Farm had some seals.
Yeah, but no, we're not talking about it because it's not on the agenda. All right, so getting back to, let's wrap. Again, back to Lou. Go ahead, Lou.
In the matter of the application of Inlet Seafood Restaurant Bar and Ice House site plan special permit, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-6-2-3.1, comma 36, with regard to the extension of time to extend it to April 18, 2026. I have read the resolution. I move for its approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass 6-0.
In the matter of the application of Fisher Additions Porch and Patio Site Plan Special Permit, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-17-1-10, with regard to the resolution amending approval, I have read the resolution. I move for its approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, 6-0. Finally, I have had an opportunity to review the planning board meeting minutes of July 24th, 2024, and I move for their approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass 6-0. All right, we have 2 weeks off, and we'll be back on the 28th. And again, Jeremy?
I'm actually not gonna.
You're not gonna be here?
What?
Yikes.
Liam's moving into college.
Oh. Well, we'll have 5 people, assuming Ed's here.
And Jeremy's not going to be
We
here.
won't have
either.
Jeremy.
Not gonna be here either.
Don't have me to kick around.
Nor will any of the attorneys.
We can sit
We
back
get to
here
sit in the big boys table. Jeremy, once again, thank you very much for all you've done.
Thanks,
We
Jeremy.
really appreciate it. Good luck out there. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.